First thing I want to do is break up some, or tear down some watercolor paper so that I can get them to the size I want. Okay, first things first. I want to break down some watercolor paper. Oh good, you can see everything. Beautiful. Okay. Okay, this is a sheet of Strathmore watercolor paper. I'm going to take the sticker off. And I'm going to break it down to the size I want it to. I buy full sheets. And then I don't cut my paper. That's one thing I never do, is I never take scissors to my paper. I like the whole decaled edge thing, so I'll always rip it. And I'm very particular about how I rip it so that I don't destroy it when I do. A couple of tools you'll need is a measuring tape. And I have a really awesome 24-inch metal ruler. This thing is a lifesaver when it comes to breaking down paper. I'll show you how to use that in a moment. Okay, so what I have here is a 22 by 30 inch piece of paper. I'm going to cut this down to two 15 by 15s and two pieces that are 5.5 by 12.5. I do not frame my paper behind glass. I will glue it down to a canvas or board and varnish it like I would an acrylic painting. I find that works wonderful and it's a lot easier and it makes for a great presentation for a painting. So I usually cut my paper down to size that'll fit a canvas. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, make sure your table is clean. Make sure your hands are clean. You don't want to have anything dirty on your table that's going to get on your clean paper. And since I'm working in watercolors today, I really need a clean sheet of paper. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down in half. What I do is I line up this edge with this edge. And then I line up the bottom edge with the bottom edge, even though it's decaled. I get a good idea about where it's supposed to be. And yes, this can be a little time consuming, so take your time. And then when I got it where I want it, I'll make sure that edge is where it needs to be. This edge is where it needs to be. I start with the first beautiful fold. Okay, I think I might get some more lighting in here. There we go. There's the first fold. Now I'm going to open this up. I'm going to fold it again from the inside. And this is where your clean hands come in wonderful, because that way you're not getting oil and grease and dirt on the sides. Okay. And again, one more time. I do this about 3 or 4 times, and I make sure that fold is prominent. Now I've noticed with this Strathmore 400 paper, you'll get these little small cracks and edges. I like those. That gives you more of a decaled edge. Okay. One more time. There we go. Now here's the scary part. This is where you're going to rip the paper in half. And with all your folding, what you're doing is you're breaking it up to the point where when you start to tear it apart, it won't rip up, it'll rip apart. First thing you want to make sure you do, I usually get it started with my hands. A little start there. Do not tear upwards. You want to tear outwards. And when you tear outwards, it'll come apart this way. If you tear upwards, you can rip on each side. Now this is the biggest tear when it comes to this paper. So it's the most scariest, but if you take your time, you peel away from it, away from this side, you'll do good. So let's start. As you can see, I'm bowing my paper underneath itself and I'm tearing away. There we go. Beautiful. Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous. You see that? There's that very beautiful decaled edge that I love to work with. I never tape my paintings down. I'll use clips to keep them from flying away, but that's what I usually go for. There we go. We've got 2 half sheets. I measure this thing from side to side. Now the thing is, because I don't frame my work behind a mat. If this edge is off a little crooked, it doesn't really matter. I mean, when I go to put it on the canvas to frame it, to give it a solid surface, it'll look a little unusual, but it doesn't look that bad. It won't. It's not gonna be too bad. So I'm not too worried about not getting it completely perfect. So now I measure from one side to the other, and this is usually 22 by 30, but sometimes you get a little extra, because right here I've got just under 22 and a half. Yep, that's 15, so this is what we'll do. I'll make this 15 by 15, and this is my exact size. So first thing I'm going to do, if this was a little bit longer, and I had that oddball, like 1/4 of an inch, I would add that to it, but I don't. So I'm going to make this an even 15 by 15. Okay. I take my metal ruler, and this is how I measure things out. I get my ruler. This little decaled edge, I'm going to figure out about where it's solid and all the loose pieces are coming off, which is usually just about right there. I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to fold it up. Now, I'm going to keep that right about here. See this little edge right here? You can barely see it, but there's like a little corner, and then all the little decaled part starts. That's where I'm going to start this one. Okay, I'm going to hold this one down, and I'm going to fold it at the edge. From right here to here is 15 inches. And as I got right here, I got 2 folds. Now what I do is I take this fold and I line it up against this line, the bottom of the paper. If that is straight, the rest of it will be completely straight. There you go. And then I make sure that one's there, you see? I'll bring this down a little bit. There you go. And then I use my thumb and I make that fold. There we go. And as you can see, it went right across beautifully. It didn't come across down. It's nice and perfect. And then again, I do my folds. I make sure that is, I do it about 3 or 4 times, because the more you do it, the more it'll break down the fibers and it'll make it easier to tear. Oop. Okay. Start that tear. I usually start it with my hands. Since this is a smaller sheet, I'm going to work with a smaller size sheet. You want to bow it underneath itself and tear away from the paper, not up. You tear up, you'll destroy it. And I usually hold this down so it doesn't, it's got some leverage. So tear away from the paper. I usually go a few inches at a time. That way I don't destroy it. And if I do have a possibility of destroying it, I can have a chance of fixing it. So there's my small sheet. There's my 15 by 15. And then we're going to do it again for the next sheet. So we've got now 2 small sheets of paper. They're 15 by 7 inches. Or 7.5. Just under 7.5. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break them down to 5.5 by 12.5. And what that's going to do is go on a support that's 6 by 13. I don't like this stark edge if I don't have to have it. So I'm going to keep my decaled edges. I need it at 12.5. So I measure at 12.5. And my decaled edge isn't as bad as these guys. So this is what we'll do. 12.5. Make sure you can see that. 12.5. Make my, fold it up. There's my mark. And that's the reason why I don't use pencils. Okay. There we go. There we go. That's my first fold. Make sure it is flush with the bottom piece. If it's off by a little bit, it won't work. Make sure that one's flush. And make the fold. That's how I break it down. And again, fold back and forth a few times so that it breaks up and it's able to easily be removed. And I usually tear the short piece first. Or work on the smaller piece instead of the bigger piece. There you go. So now it's 12.5. And now I need it at 5.5. So 5.5. There you go. I know, I got all this wasted paper. There we go. There you go. Make a fold. 5.5. There you go. Make a fold. Now, because this is such a large piece in comparison, I'm going to make a fold right down here, and this is larger than this. I'm going to make a fold in the middle, 5.5. Okay. As you start working with smaller pieces, you need to make a few more folds. Make sure this is flush with the bottom. Make sure that one's flush. There we go. And then break it down. And then from here, start the tear. Hold on to it, pull away from itself. There we go. And we have 5.5 by 12.5 right there. No scissors, no pencil marks. Nicely done. I don't mind these little imperfections. I love that, especially when I glue it down. It gives it character. With the extra pieces of paper, I don't throw this stuff away. I use this for testing out my color, if I've got it too dark or too light, that type of thing. I sometimes turn them into bookmarks. Those are pretty cool. There's really no need to waste paper if you don't have to. I mean, there's always a use for watercolor paper, so this will just go in my pile of loose paper and I'll find a use for it. So there we go.